My name is Michael Flaminio. At the time, I was a corrections officer with the Pima County Sheriff's Department. I worked in a general intake unit inside the jail. We dealt with a lot of people who were detoxing from drugs and alcohol, that sort of thing, and each night we would have something called the detox protocol where a nurse would come in, evaluate each person who was determined to be detoxing off of drugs or alcohol, and she would administer medication to people who were prescribed it by a doctor. One of the inmates was unhappy with the care that she provided, and he made an aggressive action towards the nurse, which I perceived to be a slap or an attempted strike at the nurse. In response to that, I struck the inmate, and I thought that that would be the end of it. You know, I wrote my report. My partner at the time, who was in there with me, he also wrote a report. It was very similar to mine. The sergeant at the time felt that it was worth further investigation, so they investigated it further, which ultimately ended in my suspension, termination, and being charged with criminal charges. They charged me with 2 counts of assault with injuries, which to me didn't make sense at the time because there was no injuries to me, to the nurse, or to the inmate.
Everybody, even the medical folks, when they checked them out, there were no injuries to the man. No scratches, nothing. So they started talking to every single inmate in the pod at the time. And, they got statements from inmates and stuff. And there was another inmate who said, oh yeah, he hit that guy. He really beat him up, and then he hit me too. There's no evidence, no videos, nothing that he hit him. The other CO that was present, he said, I didn't see him hit him,
I couldn't believe that they were after over a decade of working for them with a near perfect record, that they would come at me the way that they did. I felt like I was being attacked for no reason. And I got suspended, and I think the day after or 2 days after is when I called my union leader. He was the one who connected me with Javier. He's the one who said, okay, wait for them to decide what they're gonna do. And once they make a decision, contact Javier, and he'll help you out from there. I already knew how he worked, and I already knew the way that he conducted his defense and things like that. So I was like, all right, cool, I'm gonna have Javier again, and he's gonna back me up here. I told him, hey man, they just decided to fire me and charge me with criminal charges, and he was like, okay, we'll file the appropriate appeals paperwork right away. He was right on it. He was like, okay, let's do this thing.
So they decided to terminate him for assaulting 2 inmates, and also charge him with assault, criminal assault, misdemeanor criminal assault for 1 per inmate. So we appealed the termination to the merit board, and the merit board decided that no, he shouldn't be terminated. They said, put him back to work. We'll just give him a suspension, and that's it. So full back pay, but for I think 2-week suspension, that was it. He went back to work, but he still had 1 criminal charge pending for assaulting an inmate. The prosecutor, to her credit, once she got the case, she did dismiss he hit me too charge. She dismissed that because there was no evidence. She agreed. But she was adamant she was going to prosecute Michael for the other one. I said, but you're charging him with assault causing injury, and everybody says he didn't cause injury. How are you going to make that? You don't have evidence for that charge. So instead of assault causing injury, she decided, well, I'm just going to say offensive touching because you didn't cause an injury. So that's a lesser misdemeanor. And then we started defending the criminal case because they didn't want to dismiss it, and Michael was not going to say he did it. He did not assault the guy. He did what he needed to do to keep everybody safe, used exactly the amount of force that was required to contain the situation when an inmate was apparently trying to hit somebody.
I was ready and set to go. He was very in contact with me. Every time anything happened, I got a phone call, a text, or an email. I always got some sort of information from him, especially as things started picking up with the court cases, and it wasn't just like, okay, we're going to continue this, because that's what the county attorney always wants to do, is they wanted to continue it over and over and over again.
I did my thing. We were doing our interviews. We were set to go to trial, and one day, they dismissed it.
We were going to push it all the way to trial. We were going to take it to trial, and at the very last minute, when they realized that they didn't have a case, or that they weren't going to win, they decided they didn't want to go to trial, and they dropped all charges against me. There's already been people who have called me and said, hey, so who was your lawyer for all of this? And that's Javier Alatorre. That's the guy to go to. This was a very stressful time in my life, And I felt like having competent defense really took so much of that load off of my shoulders. Knowing that I could rely on Javier to do everything that needed to be done for the best possible defense was incredible.